It's a great day here at KEKCast, your fourth episode, now sponsored by Loser Dawn. There'll be links in the description how to get those Loser Dawn. Loser Dawn, buy it so you can bring it to your friends, and I'll have a great time. I'm your usual host, KEKFILA, and join with me is a returning guest, Saucy. How you doing, Saucy?
And chilling.
Good. Nice to hear that. And then a new guest, the legend himself, John Ashby. How you doing, man?
Pretty good. I'm happy to be here. I'm glad I got in early, episode 4, before the blow up.
Yeah, before blow up. Watch will be at episode 50, and you'll return as like for the fourth time, and you'll be like, "Wow, dude, I can't believe we got here." You know, it's only been.
Remember these faces. You're gonna see us a lot at table 1, and it's better to get your fears out of the way now.
True story.
That's so great. And now one thing I did want to ask before we jump to anything, Ashby, where can people like find your content? Where are your socials? Could you plug away?
You can find me on YouTube on my One Piece channel at Beats by Ash. At Beats by Ash, I just shortened that one. And then on my personal brand channel at Beats by Ash Official. Also, I do MMA content for my coach as well as nonprofit. I make a lot of videos with professional fighters at No Bull Real Talk, and as well on Instagram at Beats by Ash, and as well on Twitter.
Nice. Yeah. Do you have anything going on as far as One Piece wise? I know you did a coaching for me. I don't know if you're slowing that down or keeping it the same train.
Honestly, I've been doing a lot more coachings. I took a break recently because I was finishing up my finals, but now that I'm done with school, I'm kind of opening that back up. But honestly, don't hit me up if you're not looking to bring your all-time best, because I'm not out here to, just get money from it. I have a price point that I'm comfortable with because I want to help people become their ultimate best self. And as my MMA master always says, I will make your best better. So as I always say, invest in the best and you will be blessed. And I'm the best, so prepare to be blessed. Make sure to check out my Discord at Beats by Ash Official. There is a coaching form in the coaching channel brought to you by KEKFILA. So shout out to him for that.
Hey, KEKFILA, the ultimate tech master.
I'll make sure to leave a lot of links in the description. And honestly, the main thing to think about, and a lot of people don't actually, there isn't a big market for One Piece coaching. You've ever played any game before, like League of Legends or etc.? There's a billion websites for coaching, people looking just to talk to people, right? And do everything with that. But at the end of the day, you're going to be spending 20 hours plus a week playing this card game. You should probably get some, at least some advice, or at the very worst, some coaching, right? And it's just more of a great investment of your time rather than for that money, right? It's not really about the money either. It's just your time.
This is the thing. Rich people use money to purchase time, and poor people, they do that other stuff, And if you want to get a bunch of alt arts in your deck, then you want to get coached by the best. I mean, that's what KEKFILA did. He got his top, and now he has an alt art Doffy deck. And when you want to look like that, you got to put yourself through the reps. And, a lot of people have recently started doing coaching. I can honestly say, not from a point of arrogance, that I'm probably the first person who is actually doing that. And what I've been doing is based off of 10 years of experience. I've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh! At a competitive level since 12 years old, playing at many major events across the U.S. And you've probably seen me at a lot of those events. I always, regard myself as the legend killer, because at 12 years old, I just have, $1,000 a deck. I was selling $1,000 worth of cards every month to put myself through these tournaments. And I just enjoyed beating up people who were not fitting the actual demographic of the game. And that's transcribed to where I've gotten to this place now. And one thing I will say is there are people who can perform at the highest level, but those people are not always the best teachers. And the way that I work with people is I like to teach people not what to do correctly. I want them to understand how to correct themselves when we leave our session, so that they can get the most out of it. Because it's one thing to say, okay, this isn't correct, do this. But if you don't understand why, then what did you actually gain? You're just leaving with an inflated ego, and you're making yourself feel like your time was validated, when in all reality, the person just took your money and it actually wasn't. And that's why the structure that I have is the way it is, because I work with people for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. I'm not typically like worried too much about how long our session goes. It just depends, like, if my schedule isn't busy, that's why I like to, put them off on different days, because I want to be fresh to talk to someone so I can give them the most value that I can. Because I'm not out here to just make a quick buck. Like, I'm making so much more money through other things. I genuinely want to give back to people who actually want to perform at the highest level. And, my work speaks for itself. That's why we're doing this. And, that's why you're going to see these three faces hit 10K in the next couple months. Let's go.
That's a great point, man. I think One Piece in general, it's a very simple game actually. It's very easy to learn, just like the core basics of the game, but there's so many ways to express skill in this game and in the way that it's formatted. Because during the main phase, you literally can do everything, right? You draw your Dawn on a phase, you draw your first card on the phase, and then main phase is like you can do 5 different things. So it's like sequencing is so important in this game, and like reading cards is so important because of the way the countering works, that I think there is a lot of room for growth as well. And I completely agree with what you're saying when it comes to like coaching and all that. It's so important to kind of out what areas you need to work on as a player, and it is the main phase. So
And I mean, yeah, that's a very good point. But to build off of that, I would honestly argue that if you are trying to become good at the game, now is the time to get in. Because, you hear a lot of people from the outside perspective say that if you come from other card games, One Piece is about like getting valuable things and selling them to make money. And it's honestly crazy coming from Yu-Gi-Oh, where I'm going into these people who are hardcore sweats. I've actually had a time where a guy was actually threatening my life. And then you think about it, and because that guy threatened my life, he went on to have a 30% chance to win a Nintendo Switch and a rubber playmat. Whereas in this game, you can just perform at like the 60% win rate level and get a chopper and make $500. And so I think right now is like the best time to get in the game, not just because of the money, but why I'm bringing this up to build off of what Saucy said is that a lot of the skill expression in the game, I think really comes from the core mechanics, because like he said, it's very simple. And you got to think that the people who are performing well have typically been the people who just understand the core mechanics and understand how to anticipate what the other person does, understand how to value resources. And when you look at it, those are all skills that go along with every single deck in the game. There are a few strategies which separate between this is the lion and Zoro go face, such as Law. But for the most part, most decks, I mean, even Law, once you get enough repetitions on the deck, it's all muscle memory. And that goes hand in hand with the core mechanics. But I think that as the game goes on, we're going to see a depreciating value in the people who can win with anything just off core mechanics, because people are going to get overall generally better at the game. And that's why I think if you can get in right now and understand like the key focal points, i.e., if this guy attacks my card and he's exerting this amount of resources, then in general, it would be good for me to let this die. Stuff like that, basic hand economy, that goes a long way. And it really demonstrates how people can win with pretty much anything. And on top of that, you guys need to stop net decking. Because literally, there are people who, number one, they make these videos, not any of these people, because these are all, the high-value gentlemen, but there are a bunch of people who make these videos about decks and are like, this deck's broken, this deck's insane. And then you think this guy is, like, giving you the goo.
Titles.
You think this guy giving the goo, and you're like, okay, well, I've seen this guy actually have like premier event tops. Like, I get what he's saying, but then you think about it, and it's like, okay, well, he just went against people who were generally lower skill than him, and he could have been piloting any deck because the differential between the people with the highest level of like core mechanic comprehension is so different than the average person who has no card game experience and is just coming in with a different mindset.
I totally agree with you on that part. I mean, I think the demographic for this game is like split in two, right? You got the people playing the game because of card games, like you and me, or I think all three of us, right? We have experience in other card games in the past that are translatable to this game. And then you have people that play this game because it's One Piece. Like the IP is huge. Like people get into it because they love One Piece. And these people are not like seasoned card game players. So it's for that very reason. I think the way that the game is right now, it's like it's part of the reason why Red is so popular, because Red is extremely linear the way it is right now, and
It
it's
has
like
plot armor too.
and that too, right? That's huge as well, and that's part of the reason why Straw Hat always be good as a subtype. But for that reason, you have this huge disparity between like the card game players and the people playing this game because of IP. So when you get to that same level, when the game progresses, as like with more sets coming out, it come down more to like skill, right? So I think it's going to be interesting to see where we're going to be at like a year from now when we're at like set 8 and everybody kind of understands like, okay, always swing for 2k more, or like, how to read into like what events are coming up. It's going to be really interesting to find out.
Yeah, to kind of pivot off of something Ashby said before, actually, is all these net decks and YouTube videos, and I noticed this right when I got into trial decks. There are a ton of content creators, a sea of them, and a lot of them are a lot of clickbait. I would almost say, right? Some of it is hilarious, right? But some of it is just, I went 8-0 with this deck, and you look at the deck list, and you're like immediately just, I'm not gonna pay.
This Blurple Croc deck is the best deck you've ever seen.
Yep.
Yeah, this guy got top 32 with Crocs. See what he did? Oh, he couldn't afford these. Apparently, he couldn't afford some cards, right? And so that's why he played a bunch of one-offs. I'm like, really?
Are you talking about
Did he explain
the
that
Garp deck?
Someone
Top
told me that.
32?
I didn't listen to the video. Someone told me that, so I could be wrong. So,
Bro, okay. I really want to expunge on that because number one, I think I might have referenced this to you a long time ago, but I'm not sure. This was whenever we were like preparing like for the regional, and we were like talking about deck lists, and I was like, yeah, there's this guy who made this video, and he's like, yeah, went 8-0 with Blue Doflamingo, won a Nintendo Switch, and he's like, yeah, okay, so we're only gonna play one Boa Hancock because not that good, and then we'll play 2 Teach. I'm like, wait, what the fuck? And this guy's okay. We'll play 18 events. I'm like, bro.
yeah.
Oh, and then the guy. Oh, yeah. And then the guy.
Yeah.
The guy said he came from
I saw that
Yu-Gi-Oh!
video.
And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. You just rule sharked and cheated a bunch of people. Like, because there are certain people. If you never came from the competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Community, I would say at least 1 in 5 competitive people that is consistently topping at events. They're only winning based off of them rule sharking and manipulating the rules to gain an advantage over the other person. And that's very apparent when you see this person post this video or someone else posted a video of their deck and you're like, wait, this is a tier 5 deck. This guy's cards literally have no effects. How the fuck did he win? And it's like, oh, I see you, bro. I see you.
Yeah, have you seen that video, Saucy, the one we're talking about? Looking up, I used to look up a lot of Doflamingo profiles, and I would read this and be like, "What? Why is he running 4 overheats, 4 love mellows, like
4 love mellows, 4 overheats, and like
3
2
spottas?"
And they were like, I need to find room for 2 more Deathwings. Like, bro,
what? This guy was literally playing. He was literally playing pre-set 3 ace. Dude had like 18 events in his deck. He's like, bro, I forgot my ace leader at home. Let me
and it's not like he's playing Blurple Dial either. He's playing Doflamingo. Yeah.
It's also just like the amount of cards he could summon off of the top of his deck. Honestly, even if he won fairly, He should have at least just told people, okay, I wish I just used blue crocodile leader, because
Yeah.
the chances of him actually summoning from the deck makes no fucking sense. It's like, bro,
Have we
wait,
even used leader ability? Like, what's going on here?
Sometimes it'd be like that. Sometimes you just don't get a card. So he said, "Why not just play all the events? Doesn't matter."
Run
Yeah.
them all, man. It's like have all your down up end of your turn. Just swing
Yeah.
5 every turn. Very interesting.
I think a part of like why people do this like stuff that I would consider shisty, and I think like not everyone sees it because they don't have an eye for like competitive edge. Like someone like you or me, Sage, is like, you know, in society nowadays in general, and with the way that YouTube is now being structured, people like to tell people things in a way that isn't directly getting the point across to them because they want to appeal to like certain audiences, or they don't want to like offend anyone. Like, you know,
Yeah.
for me, for example, when someone asks me about the blue deck and they're like, okay, do you think I can win without playing the Treasure Cup Jinbe? I'm like, no. To be honest, bro, if you actually want to win and you want to have like the best chance to be competitive, get your money up and just go buy them. Like, bro, that's literally like a week's pay at any minimum wage job. And if not, and your whole point is to be competitive, then just play another deck, because you could play plenty of other decks that are more competitive than that deck and with
For a
way less
lesser
money.
price.
But it's
Yeah.
like, okay, I personally
Sell some
do-
alts or something.
yes,
You know, that's what
I
Ash is telling you guys.
I personally don't believe that like you should play the deck if you don't have that card, because it's literally just a different deck. Like,
Yeah.
and I think I prove that time and time again. But then you have these people who make these videos and they're like, yeah, you can replace it with Teach. And it's like, okay, well, that's cool. But be transparent about the fact that you are not telling this guy the most competitive advantage. If he wants to have fun and, you know, do decently well, then that's cool. But be honest about it, because that's just straight up lying to people, and not everyone like is out there going through multiple sources of information. Obviously, me and Sage have a lot of time to play and, you know, test things out. I'm sure you may too, Saucy, but, you know, I just met you, so I'm not sure how much
Oh.
you spend on a weekly basis.
Oh, dude, if you've seen my channel, all I do is like go to locals. That's like
Okay.
all my
Yeah.
content. I make
So,
vlogs going to
okay.
different shops.
Sweet. Yeah, so all three of us, like, we are able to test out the information that people are outputting. But for a lot of people, that is not the case. Because one
Yeah.
of the biggest advantages in this game over other card games in general is that it's so easy to pick up and play. And that makes people so susceptible to picking up information and taking it face value. So anyone who's out there who is a content creator themselves and is watching this, I strongly urge you to actually be like transparent to people, because I mean, that's just a low level bitch move. Like, bro, you're not even going to get to 1 million
Yeah.
subs in this category. And the fact that you're like out here like, ooh, I need to get to the point where I can get a $1 super chat. And then this guy's just like, fuck, I just spent $300 and I just went 0-4 in locals. And you're over like, ah, you got it next time, bro. Teach is broken. You got it, bro. And it's just like, okay, fuck you. Like, I just don't even know what to say.
Yeah.
And for the
I mean, that's
people,
a
yeah, for
great
the
point.
people who are not having time to look at other sources, take a second look at all information that you can, is the last thing I'll say. Because while this game is 6 months behind the actual game, there are different play styles and different things going on over there. And people want to take things at face value, but don't understand why specific cards were played. Because you may see a list, and since a lot of the content is Japanese, you may not even be able to listen to it, or it was just an article and Twitter post, and you try it out, and you're like, okay, this is like terrible. How did this guy win? You might even have wasted your money, because not everyone can afford to purchase more than one deck. And that's why I say, when you want to make an informed decision, don't just see this guy won and do it. Understand why he won, because there could be certain cards in his deck that were for a specific tournament. And I touch on this in my
Absolutely.
newest video coming out, where I explained that, you know, there are certain cards and certain decks that are going to be the best choice for a specific tournament while a tournament or two later, with the same access to the same card pool, it's going to be bad. You know, I said before that I thought that blue was really good when no one else was playing it, and not many people were
Mhm.
playing law because
Mhm.
it was, you know, really good versus Whitebeard, and you know, not many people were playing green. But if a bunch more people are playing green, number one, you need to change your deck list, and you need to put in these cards that are for the specific meta and for what you are meta calling, which is what I
Absolutely.
consider, you know, for you to be expecting. And for a casual person who's just taking in, you know, information here or there and showing up, I want you guys to understand that before making your purchase, because like I said, not everyone can afford to buy every card in the game. And you need to, you know, make an educated decision so that you can feel comfortable and feel happy, like with what you did. And we want you to be a part of the community. So don't
I
let
think the
people say,
lesson here is sorry to interrupt you, Ash.
hey, no,
I think the
I'm done talking.
lesson here no, you have some really great points there. The lesson here, you guys, is don't just go and watch one video or find one list and like build a deck just because it won some huge tournament. Do your research. Like even for myself, as somebody who's a seasoned card game player, like I watch at least like 10 different videos on Doflamingo to figure out like
Mhm.
what the right build for me is. And once you see you know, like a few videos, you start to see commonalities in different deck lists. And just because a list made, you know, first place running like Deathwings doesn't mean that's like the sauce. Like, oh shit, like I gotta run 3
Yeah.
Deathwings. That's the secret
It
tech. You
it
know what I
almost
mean?
means that it's an option that can work in some situations, but I mean, you can look
Exactly.
at anecdotal evidence of what happened in Europe with Smoker getting first and Kaido coming second. Is that just a
Right.
reflection of their meta is a lot slower paced, as in like the decks are slower paced, right? And
Yeah.
that's what kind of edged out.
Absolutely.
Um, or are those just
And
both
also
high roll
like
decks?
exactly. And also like cards like what Ash was saying earlier, certain card options really is a reflection of the meta, and that goes back to why Jinbei is so good, right? We're in a red
Mm,
dominant meta, and Jinbei is extremely good against red because you're almost never out of targets against red with
mm.
Jinbei's abilities.
The,
Basically
yeah.
just a +1 every
the
time they
the
kill it.
same thing with could be argued for playing Kuma, right? It's very good into red, right?
Exactly. Hmm.
You would almost say for things like these on KO effects, like Kuma, they're not very good against blue because people would if you have a Kuma on the field, I'm probably gonna Mihawk it, right? Um, it makes
Yeah.
sense. So
And I mean, if you look at all the, you know, the tournament winning blue deck lists, like it's
Mhm.
literally like gets stomped on by green. Like I personally right now I actually have just run 3 Mihawks, and
mhm,
yesterday I went up against Kid in the finals, and his deck was literally he ran like 24 blockers and
mhm.
Kid like he has 0 counter power, but I could not, and I drew all 3 Mihawks, could not beat the guy. Literally could not deal any damage. He ended the game at like 3 life just because he had so many blockers and Dofi has 0 interaction.
So
I just had to.
was he straight up like anti-blue? His deck was like against
When,
red.
when
Red
when I
just
spoke
deals
to
with
him,
it.
he said he built it to beat Whitebeard, but I'm like, bro, this is literally
What the
like
fuck?
anti-Dofi. You're running like 24 blockers. Like
Mm.
every blocker in green he ran in the deck, and I was
How
like,
many X Drake did he play?
0. He didn't play any X-Drake. He
It,
just
Oh, okay.
ran like
X Drake is just broken versus blue.
a million blockers,
okay.
and then the 8 cost Kid,
This is a
and
really
that
good
was the deck.
point that you're bringing up. I just want to put this out there. I've said this before on some of my videos, but some of you guys may have not heard this. Many net deckers and many people who are not a flexible player consider when you're playing blue that if the guy has 8-drop SR Captain Kid, you automatically lose. And that is not actually the case. And his words speak to that because the reason he lost is because the guy had so many blockers. And the point I always try to tell people is it doesn't matter that the guy has an 8-drop Captain Kid. While that is irritating, the overwhelmingly problem is that our core game plan is to trade away their board with our leader so that we can extract value and extend the game into the late game where our leader outvalues them. Well, if the guy has like 3 blockers on the board every turn, it doesn't matter if he has an 8-drop Captain Kid because I'm not going to be able to trade away his board anyway and get value from my leader. So it's essentially like I'm using a vanilla leader. It just so happens that having 2 to 3 blockers is a lagging indicator of you having an 8-drop Captain Kid. And I have beat plenty of people who had the 8-drop on the board. And I think it's important to differentiate that because a lot of people I hear say, yeah, if the guy has 8-drop, you auto lose. It's like, well, I mean, no, that's not true at all. And that stops people from playing certain cards and having success with certain strategies. And there are ways you can combat that. I literally beat a guy who was playing Eustace Kid. He had 2 8-drops and he had multiple blockers, but it was because I had the 1-drop Doflamingo. And when you think about that, the reason why you lose to green, if they have like, a solid hand and are able to establish the 8-drop is because I identified the core game plan of Eustace Kid in general as you want to develop an 8-drop, you want to develop a infinite value engine, i.e. a Bonnie or a Momonosuke, and then you want to have, 2 to 3 blockers, and essentially every turn, you're going to try to trade away his board, even if he doesn't have his 8-drop tapped. And when you have the 1-drop Dofi, it makes it to where if he has a 1-drop blocker, you can bottom deck his blocker, attack his Bonnie for 3-on-1. So at that point, you're now getting a 1-for-1 trade, which if you haven't been living under a rock, 1-for-1 trades are broken as hell in this game. On top of that, there's a certain number of cards in the matchup that are just straight dead, and the fact you can get rid of that for actual value is insane. And if he has the 8-drop tapped, it doesn't matter that I can't break through his shield because I can just hit for nothing and bottom deck his Bonnie. And at that point, he's lost access to his infinite value engine, and I can just eventually outwhiddle him if he hasn't been applying pressure to my leader because he won't have a way to keep searching for these blockers. It's eventually going to run out, and if people don't actually understand that, and I just wanted to touch on that because I have a lot of people ask me how you beat green, and that is one of the core strategies that I think about when playing it. So I hope that helps anybody.
Yeah, that's good. I think you have to, right when the game starts, you have to have a different mentality of how the game's going to go. And I guess the kind of combine that, I mean, you're right. The blockers end up being the problem, but 8-drop Kid is the center of that because it's so taxing to have attached on to characters. Like
essentially you're trading an 8K swing for a 1-cost blocker, and that's such a feel bad. And also the other thing to say about Kid, as long as we're talking about Kid here, in the early stages of the game, a good Kid player will literally take all your damage to their face.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why swinging with Dofi, it feels like you're playing a vanilla leader. Like the whole point of Dofi is you're swinging for value every turn. Like 7K swing every turn, it's like the most optimal attack value. But if you're swinging against Kid for 7, you're just like, okay, great. Thanks. And by the time they get to their 8 Dawn turn, they'll have like 10 cards in hand, drop the 8-drop Kid, and all of a sudden, now you got to be swinging for 8. And now all this value you get earned in the early game are useless because you have all these bodies that can't swing for 8, right?
That's
and
true.
It costs you Dawn to get to that level.
That's so true. Why. And that really goes into what I was talking about before, how if you get into the game now, or if you got into the game in set 1 at the beginning, then you were heavily rewarded. I'm about to drop some high-level value, so take a second, pause the video, like the damn video, because we're doing it out here like nobody's ever done before. But what I'm saying is, in set 1, basically all the top people were playing Eustace Kid, not just because it was really oppressive and broken. There were multiple other strategies you could choose, but it looked like a tier 0 meta because a lot of these high-level people were saying, oh yeah, I went against 5 mirrors, and for whatever reason, a lot of people just didn't understand that whoever wins is ultimately determined by who decides not to attack the other person's leader and who is able to sit there and basically play as a boring game as possible. And, I saw that a lot at the Treasure Cup. There was one guy who he got top 4 or top 2 of the Treasure Cup. I was talking to him, and he told me in 7 mirrors, 6 people decided to attack his leader from the beginning. And I'm like, what the fuck? That's so broken. You just got a free tournament. Because you got to understand in this game, one of the biggest appeals is that anyone can beat anyone. And if you don't have that mindset, then you're never going to be able to progress. Because ultimately, with a limited card pool, you cannot differentiate your deck that much in the current game state to gain such a competitive advantage to where you can bypass certain percentages and certain rock, paper, scissors matchups. Sometimes, if you're playing Kaido and you go against Zoro, like, I don't know what to tell you. You should just sign the slip. Like, the guy just wins,
Let's go.
And on that note, it's like, okay, if you got in and learned the core mechanics about the Green Kid mirror match from day one, then you were just winning hella events and you were beating even top people. Bro, there's this stream. I remember this exact clip. There's this guy. His name, I think, is Andres Torres. And in Yu-Gi-Oh!, if you guys are familiar, he has like the most premier event wins in the history of the game, or tied for it or something. He has 5 YCS wins. And a YCS is typically like over 1,000 people or more. And it plays out like all the way through. So that is like a really high accomplishment. And on the stream, this guy was playing Eustace Kid, and he is going against another good guy, Andrew Duval, I think. Or no. Okay, maybe he wasn't. But either way, he's playing Kid. And this guy is Spanish, so he doesn't actually speak English. And that's partially why he did this. But he had a 5-drop blocker law, and he had an 8-drop Kid. So he plays the 5-drop blocker law, and he returns back his 8-drop Kid because he didn't realize that you couldn't replay it out. And that's just hilarious to see.
I remember this. I watched this live. It was
really
the guy
live?
Yeah, it was like round 2. It was like round 2 out of like 8 rounds. And yeah, he's on stream and like, and everyone in the comment chat is like, "What the f? What WTF?"
But I bring that up because not a lot of people know that that guy is actually considered one of the best card game players of all time. And that shows that if you are willing to put in the work, especially in set 1, I will say now people have gotten a lot better, so it's more difficult to top. You could gain a large advantage, and I'm just saying the coaching is available for anyone who needs that advantage.
Quick plug.
Great points.
That's great.
I will teach you how to not return your 8-drop Kid back to hand like no one has ever done before.
To read?
I can't.
I used to make deck
from
profiles for other card games, and one of the first things I said as a rule, one was have fun, the other one was read your cards. And that was always a standard rule because that was
impossible for Yu-Gi-Oh players.
Yeah, people do.
A common joke running around here.
Yeah.
Yu-Gi-Oh players don't read their cards.
I like in this game, there isn't a ton of reading of cards, actually. Everything's pretty vanilla. Oh, it has blocker. Oh, it has rush, right? So
keywords are always nice.
Keywords are very nice, right?
Make things a little easier. Yeah. Unfortunately, in Yu-Gi-Oh, they don't really do keywords that much. I think.
Oh, they're keywords. They're just 2 to 3 sentences.
Like banish.
Yeah.
It's like a fake keyword. It's like, yeah, you can banish, but then there are other things that just disregard it. So now you've got stuff like
giant wall of text.
You ever heard of Forbidden Droplet?
I play Yu-Gi-Oh too.
Okay, yeah. So there's just this one card that, like, one big part of Yu-Gi-Oh is targeting the other person's cards, and there are some effects that directly protect your cards from being targeted. But then they just introduced this one card a couple years ago that says select instead of target, and you would think that is the same keyword. It's like, no. Oh, you just get to bypass this for some broken reason. And it makes it really confusing for new people to join the game. And that's what's really nice about this game is, like you were saying, how little text you have to read. I forgot from playing Yu-Gi-Oh for so long, because as you play a game like that, or even Magic, and you're looking at all these big text cards, how much time it takes to read all that stuff. Obviously me and Saucy know a lot of the effects off of recall, but if you're a new person sitting there hold on, let me read this, hold on, let me read this, and then it's like, okay, we're going into time, okay, damn. And this game is not like that. Every game is pretty much fast paced, and that gives you more time to think about your decision-making process.
That's one of the great reasons why it's so good to enter this game this early on, because cards in the early stages of the game, they tend to be a lot more basic, and then they ramp up as more sets come out, right?
Yeah.
So I think,
Well,
eventually this game's going to get to that point, but
in
right
set
now, it's
2
a lot
and
more
set
simple.
1, what is the most complicated card that is not a leader? Like, has the most, like, oh, I have to read this twice kind of feel.
Any card with more than like 2 sentences in the
Like-
text
Set 1 or
box.
set
It's a
2?
body.
Like, are you talking about in
Both
the
sets.
set 2
Both
meta?
sets.
Okay.
In this meta.
I would say 8 drop Captain Kid is somewhat confusing because you got to
Okay.
know, okay, like, if I have 2 8 drop Captain Kids or another character, can he target that one?
Yeah, they have
You
to
know, like,
clarify.
there are
Yeah.
certain things like that where it's like, okay, because that's such a weird thing.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but when I was playing Doflamingo, Corona and the 3-cost Dofi was a little bit confusing to read too, because it doesn't really like. I mean, I understand it now, obviously, but like when you're looking at top 5, do
Mhm.
you like, okay, can I put 2 at the bottom?
They
like,
don't
leave 3
clarify
at the
that at
top,
the
That's
beginning
true,
of the
that's true.
game.
rearrange it a certain
Yeah.
way, it is a little bit confusing in that
Yeah.
way. And then Dofi himself ability it's not confusing, but there's a lot going on there. You
Mhm.
kind of have to like break it apart.
Yeah, I
Okay,
mean,
so you have 2
leader
guard attack.
skills can always be complicated. I think that's where it should be the most complicated, right? But then,
Yeah.
I mean, like sometimes what happens is you play against somebody, they have no idea what your deck does or what a card does, and that can really throw you off as far as what you practice against. I would say even going into Peoria, I know a lot of people they're playing mostly to play against Straw Hat, but then straight Strawbeard, right? And then they see a Boatbeard and they're like, well, I know it's good, but like I didn't practice to play against this, right? And I had a recent podcast that hasn't uploaded just yet with Garrett, and he said that was one thing that threw people off. They didn't know what to do yet against Boat.
I think the big part too is like people don't understand, like when you go up against Boatbeard, you don't play the same way as if you went up against Strawbeard.
Yeah.
Right? It's like going to life against Boatbeard is actually more detrimental at times, because you're just getting them to where they want to be to play that boat and put extreme pressure on your board with all their characters.
Yeah, and they're more
Hold up.
pushing your board. Okay, go ahead.
I'm gonna drop some extreme value here because I see people just get free wins like this all the time. Number one, if you're playing Whitebeard, I understand it is a powerful deck, but there are a lot of people who are just like taking things in without like thinking. And when you do the math, it's not actually that consistent of a deck. And that's why I'm glad you brought up your point about people not playing efficiently against it, because yeah, it is a good deck, because not everyone fully understands how to play efficiently and effectively versus the strategy in the same way as others. And that can allow you to win games that you shouldn't necessarily be meant out to win. You know, a good example of that is there are a lot of times that I found in testing of both versions where you may have like too many events in hand at one time, or too many cards with no counter in your hand at one time. And because you have a lot of cards, you think like from the other person's perspective, the guy would be safe. But if he actually just goes in and just peppers you for minimum numbers, you just lose because you don't have that. Like a prime example
It's
of
that
that
poker.
is
Yeah.
in the Peoria regional. I went against a Whitebeard guy while I was on Dofi, and he played 3 back-to-back 9-drops on curve. And I would, you know, that's just broken. When a guy has 2 back-to-back Whitebeard, that's already super oppressive, and you have like a 10% chance to win if you don't have something to respond. But I just went 8, 8, 8, 8, and the guy just hit an event in life and another Whitebeard, and I just won for no reason. But people don't do that because, you know, one of the biggest deciding factors behind like who is going to be a good player and who is going to be great is you need to identify at a pivotal time when you are required to take a risk in order to win. Because when you think about it on an in-depth level, a lot of times you can anticipate that if I don't go for it here, I'm going to automatically lose on the other guy's turn because of what he already has. Whereas if I
Exactly.
go for this now, I actually have a chance to win. And like I said, anyone can beat anyone. And that's why you have to understand what is the most effective and efficient play I can do at this time so that I can win more games overall. Because anyone can top one tournament, but what's going to differentiate you from the pack is taking risks and understanding when you have to make this decision instead of sitting there and playing
Just roll over and lose
safely.
the game. Yeah. No, you touched on so many points there, and I think part of it also that's kind of like where like reading part of the game that I enjoy most actually is that meta game aspect where you're like literally like reading your opponent and trying to figure out what's in their hand, right? And that's kind of why
Anticipation.
in a vacuum where we have zero information, like making assumptions is fine, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
When you get to that end game point where they're playing like triple Whitebeard, you should already have the information at that point from your earlier attacks and like every little sign that they give you, like you
Mhm.
should be like reading into that and trying to figure like, okay, so I just swing into Whitebeard for like 6k and they just took it. That's usually a signal that they have like no counter power or they have really good cards in their hand or just they just have absolute trash in their
Yeah.
hand, right? So
Facts.
like, I think that part of the game is like a very less explored avenue that people don't understand is like there's certain points of the game where your opponent actually gives you information that you need to remember and that will contribute to your win in the game. And the last thing I'll say about what Ash was saying also is like there's certain points of the game like you could see the future, right? If you're facing a board with 3 Whitebeards and you know you're gonna lose your next turn, like don't just go and play like 3 blockers and pass turn and like die. Like go for it. Sometimes you just have to do it. Like it's sometimes it's do or not, do or
Yeah.
die time, man. Just go all in and sometimes it works out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I
agree.
I agree with that. I remember one time I went for do or die on an online, and I didn't kill him that turn, right? And I'm like, okay, well I lose the next turn, but I somehow lived due to whatever, right? I guess I didn't think his play was very offensive, or they made a mistake, right? They made a mistake with how they did their dawn on their characters, and then you ended up living, and you're like, oh, I guess I get to crack back and win, I suppose. So there's that too, right? You can also do the same thing
Get how
back,
you
and
make
you
it,
can play
man.
that poker face with your opponent as well.
Mhm.
And sometimes they might try to call your bluff, and they didn't play it right, um, making that mistake. And I guess one thing I was segueing with cards as well, and having an advantage over an opponent is just inexperienced against X deck or X card or X situation, right? Is one thing I've been doing at locals. I mean, people probably do this in set 4 a lot because there's gonna be a lot of new leaders, right? But like I'm playing Magellan, and people legitimately have no idea how to play their deck anymore against it. They're like, "Wait, I lost to Dawn. Okay, I can't kill this card, or do I kill this card? Or they kill
Exactly.
Magellan, or they on purpose kill Magellan. They lose to
They
Nog."
kill Magellan.
And
Like,
then I'm
wait, I
like,
lose to
well,
Don?
like I don't know what your plan is, but that's it's
Get a
it's
free win because you're
it's
playing
pretty
Magellan.
yeah, it's pretty funny. But like against experienced players, they're gonna know what to do, right? But and it might be like that in set 3 or 4 where people don't know what to do. And I think even Nami might even be one of those things where people, oh, I've never been in this situation where they're just going for deck out and I need to go for game, right?
Right. There's certain
So
players that will like they don't really like change their game plan depending on the deck they're playing against. Like,
mhm.
and I think that's part of the reason why I think Nami early on is gonna get a lot of like free wins because people are just like their own thing and disregarding what type of deck that they're playing against. Like Nami is
Mhm.
not a type of deck you can just like dirtle around and like try to plus cards. You gotta apply pressure.
Mhm.
I agree
So
with you with
I.
what you're saying.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Hey, is anybody excited for set 3? Or is it just me? I'm just like waiting, man.
I am very interested to hear you
I
say
like
that because, in my objective opinion, a lot of people are going to tell you why they're excited about certain strategies and why they think it's going to be super fun. But I've actually followed the Japanese side of things very closely, and I understand what all of the cards do in the next meta. And I personally think that this meta has been not as fun as set 1 was because I don't think, if you're being honest with yourself, that the meta is really as diverse as most people think it is. I think that
Are you
red,
talking set 2 meta or set 3
yes, set
meta?
2. I'm talking about in
Okay,
set
yeah.
2, the meta.
100.
Red has just been overtly more powerful than every other color. When we look at it, number 1, purple is like 1/3 of a deck. Purple really has no unique mechanics. It's literally just gets all of the garbage given to other people. And in set 3, it's basically not even a deck at all. And going into set 3, you're going to see things become even thinner in the pack. In set 2,
Yeah.
at least, green is a viable option. But if I'm speaking objective here, if you want to win the entire event and have the highest chance, and you don't care about play style or what you enjoy, objectively speaking, you should only be looking at decks that play red or green cards, because blue, while I do think it is fun and you can perform with it, you can say that about any strategy. Ultimately, there is no hard removal in blue, and for whatever reason, red just has fucking 5 Vista effects. Like, it's
All the
literally just
removal on
so
the
broken.
planet.
And it literally just lowers the skill level of the game. I will say that if you're playing Zoro or Luffy, if you're in an aggro v aggro matchup, it does require some skill to value out resources and understand if the exchange of cards is worthwhile. But if you've been practicing that for a while, it
Mhm.
really is not. And a lot of people don't understand. I think the reason why our meta is different than in the Japanese meta is because people in Japan who grow up speaking Japanese, you always hear the stereotype that like Asian people are good in math and stuff. People who don't speak English and grow up with languages such as Japanese, where saying numbers that we would say 7 is just like s, like one syllable, that allows them to calculate math, basic math, at a faster rate than us, giving them naturally, like objectively speaking, just a better processing speed in terms of basic math. And what that does is it incentivizes people to actually play decks like Law, where calculating out how much Dawn this entire play is can be done in a shorter amount of time. Because everybody knows if you're in a competitive tournament and you're sitting there thinking for a long time, the other guy could be enticed to call the judge on you for slow playing. And if you're a man of respect, you don't want to take up the guy so much time. But it's like, in those matchups where the value trades are very important and Dawn efficiency is key, such as in the Zoro deck, was heavily prevalent. Like, learning a language that requires like less thoughts, per word is an advantage. And that's why everyone over here just plays Whitebeard, because they couldn't win with Zoro, and they went against a guy who's playing Whitebeard, and they're like, damn, this is kind of a similar strategy, and I lost to this guy playing Whitebeard. Let me just soak in some anecdotal evidence and just play this deck too. And then we get to, the even more overwhelming point. These people are just in these online regionals. They're like, damn, okay, there's real money on the line. And it turns out this actually isn't a good deck, and I can't actually win with it. So now I need to use my Gum webcam and reach off of the screen and hit this trigger check.
Gum webcam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out to Nightwing Gaming Loft. That man funny as hell.
Well,
But yeah, like
Bro, I've
that
seen
just
some
creates a
hilarious
different
cheating
like
videos.
yeah.
fabricated meta, bro.
Yeah, when we're done talking about OPO3 excitement, I'll jump into cheating and I'll show you some videos. You probably have already seen them, but just
Yes.
for the sake of the podcast.
Okay, I will say I don't post those on your YouTube or show them on this podcast. You can show them afterwards because people have told me that you can get banned, and some people have been threatened for showing that.
I don't personally understand why. Well, I mean, I guess we'll get into
Let me be
the whole
banned.
cheating thing. But let me add to your point, Ash, about the JP meta, and I totally that I've never thought about it like that before, like why
Yeah.
Asians are good in math, but that's a very interesting
In
point
terms
I had
of
never
basic
really
math.
thought about.
No, I'm not talking about like
Then why do
skill,
they
but in terms
suck
of
at card
processing
games?
Speed.
Just kidding.
Processing speed, that's just an objective statement that on average is going to be easier for people like that.
That makes sense. So what I'll say about the JP meta, I really feel like the reason why our metas are so like different, or there are variances, right, is because the JP meta, they're the first people to see these new cards, right? So they really are the ones that establish the meta. They only have 3 months to develop it. And that's kind of like where we come in.
Yeah, and
Everybody else, we know what's coming. Go ahead.
Yeah, we copy the end of their meta, and that's where our meta starts, and then that develops into a whole
We
new
develop
meta.
it more.
Or even better, when OPO4 starting now, we're already starting that meta OPO4 meta. We already have our English Western meta with OPO4. I kind of wish the game came out the same time for Japanese and English.
That's so irritating.
Yeah,
it lowers the skill level, to be honest with you. Like I said, there's actually a point of interest where people can gain a competitive advantage over the core mechanics over here. Whereas in Japan, you know, card games, you also got to think, are much more a part of that culture. And that's why certain games have allowed a success in that area, in that market, and not over here. So when you think about the average player just coming from a higher point of intellectual prowess in the card game industry, it makes sense that they're going to master the core mechanics faster than us. And so they're going to play the decks that reward you for the most skill expression and decisions, whereas like people over here, they're just basing their statements off anecdotal evidence, because I think a lot of people do net deck, but what they will do to go a step further, because they don't actually have time or they don't want to like actually test, they'll change one or two things from the guy's deck list and be like, okay, this is insane. And it's like, okay, I mean, but did that really have to do with your integral strategy to winning?
Yeah.
But like, enough about that. I know I was rambling on for a minute. My point is, in set 2, you could play red or green. You know, you could play blue, but once again, he mentioned that's a meta call to destroy red. And if we saw an increased amount of green and an increased amount of law, that's no longer a viable option in a vacuum. Going into set 3, I'm sorry to break everybody's hearts here, but now green is just removed. You literally cannot play green. So there's 3 integral strategies that you're going to want to know about here. So make sure to smash the like button once again, because I'm giving it to you as it is, and I don't always give out value for such a low price. Essentially, in set 3, you can play red. There's 3 viable red strategies. I don't know why that's allowed. And then one thing is, we're gonna go ahead and give red 2 more searchers. Okay, I mean, you know, searchers are not unfair. I mean, hold on, searcher check. Okay, this just in. Purple still has 1 bunk searcher. Okay, blue still does not have an actual legitimate searcher. Okay, now let's think about this. Nami is already the most broken searcher. I mean, it's just in red. Okay, well now we're gonna introduce Buggy. Okay, Buggy's cool, right? You know, he's interactive. He adds a fun new playstyle to the deck, you know? He just, you know, power creeps the actual legitimate highest vanilla stat line at that cost. A 1 cost 3K that on play adds a red event from the top 5 of your deck. Why is this allowed? And also, he just has another random effect that says he
Let's
can't
just
be
throw
KO'd
in
by
that
splash.
added effect as well.
What the fuck? This literally just, bro, that just means that in the Zoro mirror match, you can't attack him with your leader or Zoro character, and that is just random. It's like, that was unnecessary. He's already power creeping Sunny-kun. Like, and you can add any red event. That just, there's no restrictions. This is the other thing. The red cards don't have restrictions. The blue cards only have synergy with Doflamingo. Even some of the widely regarded best cards, Boa Hancock, it's $100. And it's like, wait, this card is shit if you don't have this leader. If we remove this leader from the game, it's not even a real card. Same thing with Jinbe. It's just a slower version of what red gets.
I mean, let's be honest. Without Doflamingo as a leader card, blue is pretty bad.
Yeah,
Dofi's the only thing.
Without Doflamingo as a leader card, purple is better than blue, and purple isn't even a real deck. And on top of that, so we have red, you know, which is Buggy over here, broken as hell. Okay, we'll also give them the Ezo Searcher, a card that now allows you to add the most polarizing and unfair card in set 3, 5-cost Marco. Now, you may have thought, okay, set 2, 9-drop Edward Newgate was such a polarizing and a win more card for the person who got to go first. Think again. Now you can search both of them. Isn't that cool? You know, you just get this card. Hold on. Let's have a process check. I'm one of the devs. I'm going to put myself in place of the devs because the One Piece employees don't speak for themselves. So a real man is going to have to take charge. Okay. I think, you know, your removal isn't really just a core component of the game. I think it just has to do with like Red's gimmick, right? You know, and like Red should just have like all of the cards that let
Agree.
you remove a card, and all the other colors should just develop stuff so the red guy can just remove them. So we're gonna add in this card that's
Mm.
5 cost 6K. Okay, I mean it meets the, you know, the vanilla stat line. It meets like arguably the best stat line in the game, because on the following turn, you just do a 1 Dawn investment to hit for the magic number 7. Oh, and it has 1 counter, so it's never dead. It's also just searchable. Okay, and you get to kill something on play. So hold on, how
Mhm.
many Vista effects do we have? One Vista,
I
Mass Deuce, Nico
yeah.
Robin, Edward Newgate,
Mhm.
also Jet Pistol's broken, and now you have this Marco, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. That's 24 cards. Okay, let's add in the
Mhm.
Ezo Searcher. And also, since your buggy just adds any red event in the game, and red events are just way more
Yeah.
busted than
Yeah.
all other events,
Mhm.
you can just give this guy an immortal attacker. And it's like, wait, why is this fair? That just lowers the skill expression of the game. And honestly, I'm telling you this guy, you guys, this right now. If you want to be competitive and you want to win, I feel comfortable giving you guys this information because I'm just the all-around better player, and I'm just gonna, you know, just clap you boys up. But we're gonna enter a point which could be considered arguably the first tier 0 meta. And what I mean by that is
Let's
the
hope not.
red cards are so objectively busted that while 3 red leaders do a similar function, the power level is just so far apart from these other decks, you're going to have to find a way to differentiate yourself in terms of lines of play and thought processes in the red mirror match. And if you do so early on, you are going to lap a lot of people, because towards the middle and end, a lot of people are going to gain this insight. And if you start playing the sim with set 3 at the time of this recording, maybe even print off some proxies, you are going to have such an advantage. Like I was talking about, how aggro v aggro has a lot of skill differential, but aggro v control is just straightforward. You just blow the guy out of the water and hit face. So if
Mhm.
you
Does
can
control even
create,
exist in
I
OPO3?
I
I really
I
feel like it should.
I would consider Big Mom maybe more control, and also
mhm.
Control Ace. That's why people say that if you're playing
Oh,
Striker
control
version,
ace.
if you're playing Striker version of Ace, which essentially is set out to gain a +1 in card advantage via the new stage every turn, versus a Zoro deck, the Zoro person is going to blow you out of water because you are not going to have enough time to gain that advantage and
Yeah.
make use of it. So
Mhm.
that matchup is relatively easy for the Zoro player. And that's why I'm personally going to stick with the Buggy Pirates variant. And my main general point is there's still no searchers for blue. You know, you got a bad buggy. Wait, blue has a buggy, and red just got a better buggy. I just thought about that. That's so broken. What the hell?
Mhm.
Yeah, it
And
doesn't
then you
even
think
sense.
about it, and it's like, okay, the first searcher for blue. Let's go, boys. Blue finally gets added in the DLC. And then you're just
Hell
like,
yeah, we got our Onami. Oh wait,
I
Until
yeah,
Down is
he's got a counter.
garbage? What
yeah.
the
Now, that's where we're locking these boys up at the bottom of the sea. That's why Jinbei
Right.
bottom decked someone, because he's
Yeah.
so bad, they had to lock him up in the tower at the bottom. But then you think about it, and you're just like, okay, so we already have Curly to Dan, which in my opinion right now is one of the most busted cards in the game. I personally think that if that card was not even in the game, Red would still be considerably better than the other decks in terms of card quality, just because they have so many tools and so much like removal. But now we're getting 2 more searchers in red. Put this into perspective. Now you could theoretically run 4 Nami, 4 Buggy, 4 Ezo Searcher, and you can add all of those off of your Curly to Dan,
Curly, yeah.
which means your
Insane.
searcher can now add 12 other searchers. I'm not saying that's optimal, but that's just broken to think about. They have more searchers that can be added off of their searcher than blue and purple combined.
Mhm.
That's pretty insane.
Yeah, the searchers is definitely a big issue when it comes to consistency. Makes it a little
Yes.
too consistent. You know, when initially this game came out in trial deck format, I thought Red's gimmick would just be rush, right? Generally,
Yeah, me too.
and I
That's what
actually
it was.
I still think it is a little bit. It's
Mhm.
definitely swayed away from that. But the main thing is, I do want to touch on this. Every deck has some form of removal, and that's the name of the game, is removal, in my opinion. However, Reds is just better. So it's
I think it's the sheer quantity of removal
yeah.
also.
Yeah, the
Like,
quantity and
really
how
awesome.
better it is, how high quality the
I see
removal
what
is.
you're
Yeah.
saying, but I would argue that blue does not necessarily have direct removal
Yep,
because
you're right.
my point is that with red, like all of their removal is an immediate effect on the
Mhm.
game. And
Yeah.
when you think about blue, there's only one card in the blue archetype that has a direct hard removal effect,
Mhm.
which is 9-drop Mihawk. And then you consider
It
you have to
costs
wait
9.
5 turns
Mhm.
to play that out. And on top of that,
Mhm.
it literally cannot interact directly with half of the late game bombs that the other people
Yeah.
are be playing.
With
It's like if we're not going to have any early
Mhm.
game removal, don't you think it would make sense to make things more fair that our bomb would at least be able to answer theirs or
At
be
least make
better
it
than them?
target an 8 cost. That's all I'm asking.
well,
Like,
Yeah.
is
And
that asking too
we just
much?
get
Like,
the main thing is too, and I saw this right when I picked up blue in trial deck format. I was reading Crocodile Skill, and I was like,
yeah.
well, why would I want to put a card back to someone's hand? I'm almost doing them a favor, right?
Yes.
At that point.
right.
And I think it's still like that. I think it's almost an oversight. And we're like, oh, we want to make blue removal, but not the same as everyone's else's, right? And
We'll
I'm
give
like,
Bandai props though, because they have made improvements on blue for
mhm,
OPO4 finally, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But I'm excited for OPO3 because we
mhm.
are actually getting a form of removal
Yes,
in the
Yes. Yes.
in the event, right? The
3,000
4-cost
star.
event, the
Do you
bottom deck of
play
5.
for those now just to
Yes.
try it out?
Play
I
4.
think
Rotate.
I'll definitely
You
be
need
testing
to.
like 3 to
Do you
4.
have
'Cause
a do you have a list you guys are thinking of? Like,
Yes.
are you like removing like 2 love mellows? Like
I'm locked in. This entire time you boys have been speaking, I am playing lines in my head. I am in a different mindscape. There are people
he's
who
dropped Verona, guys. He
manifest.
knows what's
Hey,
coming.
there are people who manifest, and there are people named John Ashby. And that's why I'm going undefeated tomorrow. Let's go! Yes, sir.
Man, I'll be watching.
do you have an
Hey,
idea for set 3 Doflamingo Ashby already?
yes. Yes.
Can you
Everything I do is
is the
based off
goo
of
going to be
math.
on Patreon? Is that going
Is
to
the
be
goo
the
gonna be on
goo?
Patreon?
Yeah.
Maybe. It just depends. I'm gonna be honest, like I'm trying to get my boy Ortiz to be helping me out on the Patreon, and he's been lacking on the article. And so I'm trying to make sure that I have enough content to put out on there before I heavily promote it because
Mm.
I do want support from that, but I mentioned before this isn't my main source of
Mhm.
income, and videos in general is. So I've got to put my feet to where I can actually grow, and the personal branding stuff and the stuff with my MMA content, I need to be doing paid avenues over there. I will share the Doflamingo list eventually, especially if I don't think that it is super effective in the meta because like we were talking about before, how some people put out these shady lists and promote it as being the best deck.
Mhm.
I won a 55-person case tournament, and I didn't give out my list until I played in multiple regionals. But then in the most recent rant video, I actually gave out essentially what I was playing and what I felt was the best strategy.
Mhm.
And I feel comfortable doing that because I already won. And I want to put that in
Mm.
perspective to people. The highest level people in the game, most of them do not post on YouTube at all, and they do not give out their secrets. And you have to take that into context because if someone is looking out for their best interest to be the most competitive,
Yeah.
number one, if they're going to share something, like for me, a lot of people ask, share things with me or whatever, or want to see what I'm doing. And to that, I say, number one, I'm mainly only interested in sharing content with people who are in my circle
Yeah.
because I have to trust you. You already understand that people in this game, it kind of sucks. The tournament organizers just post your list without consent. And that makes it difficult for you to maintain a competitive advantage. So if you actually want to win, you need to be even more conservative about protecting your thoughts and your intellectual property if your main interest is to be competitive. And I think we've seen some of the people who they've won the most in this game at treasure cups or regionals, they didn't share their list. And you got to think about that. If the guy is sharing his list, that's most likely because he is going to play a
Mhm.
different list or a different deck going
Mhm.
forward at the next tournament. So don't just immediately purchase a deck that a guy is just posting like that, because, you know, the game moves very fast.
Yeah.
And we've already touched on this a bunch. You know, this may not be the best deck going forward, and I don't want a bunch of people to waste their money. So I always try to keep that transparent.
Yeah. Maybe we should have like a third account, right, between all of us. And it's supposed to be bad deck lists, but we produce them like they're good deck lists. So people play them, and we face them in tournaments, and we go, we gotcha. See, there's a switch and bait. Actually, to pivot on this real quick before we go on to the next kind of subject, right? And for Cardfight Vanguard, there was only a few content creators at the time, and there's one guy named Solemn Vanguard, and his main,
I've heard of that guy.
Yeah, he's a very good player, right? In his own right, like one of the only content creators. But he played a deck, and I don't know if you ever played any Vanguard, right? Essentially, how it works is you take a damage and you put it over here, face up, and that's where you can do things, right? And that's where you can use skills. So, he was playing a deck, and he did not make any content over this deck at all until he won and got into World Championship. He won first place in some big regional, right? And the main concern there was because this deck, if you don't deal any damage, it just loses. If you just deal damage when you're ready, right?
Similarly to a drop kit deck, right?
Yeah, well, it was more of an OTK, right?
Oh, okay.
It was more of like, it wasn't a one-turn kill, but it definitely did a lot in one turn, right? Because of some busted couple cards that legitimately got restricted later on. And eventually a card got banned. It just kind of what it was. Right, and
I feel like that's kind of like what's happening with Strawbeard right now, or before, right? When people didn't really understand how Strawbeard works, how they really like don't want to take damage early on. It was just winning like a lot of the different events. Right?
Yeah,
go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
But I think the main thing here wasn't about the deck itself. It was more the fact that if he shared any of this information, right, and he played against an opponent that would most likely, because he's like the only content creator. If they were to see that, they would go, "Oh, I'm not going to do you a single damage until I'm ready," and then they go, and then they just lose, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's true, and that sucks because there is this one guy, and he basically, like, in set one, he waited until after he won a treasure cup or got top or something, and then he just revealed to everyone. He was the first person I saw widely say, yeah, you don't attack with your leader against the other guy's leader until you've already just exposed all their resources. And I was like, bro, why you got to be telling people that? Because I already knew that, but most people didn't. And then that just made it to where the event I was going to, a bunch of people actually didn't attack, where these other people just got free wins. And honestly, in this game, I think what sets a lot of people back, and also it does kind of point out to, in my eyes, I'm not calling anyone directly out, but personally, I think if you get like top 8 at like back-to-back-to-back events, then you are either just being like a dick to people and rule sharking, or you got extremely, extremely lucky, and that's not going to happen to only but like 1 or 2 people, because really, the game isn't consistent enough for you to be able to have like, you know, 70 to 80% win rates every single time. You know, there are certain things like red is the most popular deck, and whoever goes first, it doesn't matter if you make the best play against this guy in more tournaments than him, like 80 to 90% of the time. If he opens turn 2 Nico Robin and has back-to-back Edward Newgate on curve, or even what Saucy was touching on with how much you can do in Whitebeard in one turn, like, you just can't win. And a lot of people want to pretend that, and for me, I see certain people like top back-to-back like that, and I'm, bro, that's a little sus. Because, like, in order to win with Stagebeard, ideally, you need to see the stage. And, like, there are some people who have like only like topped like one event. Like there's this guy that I'm kind of friends with. His name this guy I'm friends with Will to Win Gaming, and his friend Tyler Green. Tyler, you know, he got second place at the Peoria Regional, and he said that he opened boat all 8 or all 9 rounds, and you know that allowed him to get into top 16. But the thing is, at the very next event that he played at in Arlington, he lost like 3 rounds in. And that just kind of shows that he's not cheating. That he was being fair, because there are some people who top back to back to back, and it's like, bro, I can understand you can win one tournament, but as you're winning more, winning with any deck, but especially a deck that relies on one card, that's super suspicious. Like,
Especially the people that are winning consistently, like online events, like, bro,
yes,
really?
and
You're so
that's
good at
why
this game.
I don't think Whitebeard is as good as it is, because there are inflated results. Like, it's a good deck and it's powerful, but it is not as consistent as some other strategies like Zoro, where essentially it doesn't matter what hand you open, you can essentially accomplish your same central game plan in every match, no matter what cards you open. And that can't be said about every deck. Like, blue, you need to open a stacker, or you aren't going to have what I call your engine
Optimal,
online. You're not going to be able to do what your deck is intended to do. In Zoro, that's not true, because even if you miss with one searcher, well, that Curly to Dan could just turn into a natural attacker with a one Dawn investment. And that can't be said about Whitebeard.
And that's why Red is so strong OPO3, right? They have so many like good cards. Their whole deck is basically filled with good cards. So it's like it's hard for them to whiff in their opening hand unless they like draw all events or something.
Yeah.
Ace is so broken, bro.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, because
I am so stoked for Ace.
Me too.
I'm
Because
definitely gonna be building Ace, and I'm gonna try Rob Lucci.
Yeah, Rob Lucci. The one other thing I was to say, OPO3. So you've got your 3 red decks, your Ace, your Whitebeard, and your Zoro, and those are arguably all like, top tier contenders. Then you've got yellow, which is really good against Zoro and Ace, but doesn't have the best matchup versus Whitebeard, because like naturally they're gonna take the life, so it kind of counters you. And so that's another viable option, but also Rob Lucci. And Rob Lucci is good, but my understanding of the deck is that is one of the highest forms of skill expression. So if you enjoyed blue, or even a green kid, that might be like the deck for you, because you can create higher levels of skill expression. And the other decks, like, Red Green Law, which was like a high and intensive skill deck, is kind of abysmal now. Same thing with green, where like the kid deck, you add a lot more decision making than something like a Kinemon. Those are kind of out of the way because they rely on the board too much, and the removal is too high value. That's why I'm telling you guys, like, I'm not trying to be like super down on this meta, because I am excited, but I just personally would consider this something in the works of a tier 0 meta, similarly to in Yu-Gi-Oh! We recently had one of those like 6 months ago or something like that at the time I quit playing. And a lot of the top people really liked that format, because there was a high level of skill expression that had kind of mitigated a lot of RNG factors that have been present in the game for a long time. And it made it to where if you were really good and put the time in to understand all of the interactions, then you are naturally going to be rewarded for that. And I think that that is the biggest advantage of this set being added to the game, because a lot of people's deck lists, the majority you're going to go against, are going to be very similar to each other. But if you understand those interactions better than the average person, it's going to go a long way. And that's where I think if you come in with this mindset, it's going to be a lot better for you, rather than trying to force something to work that really is just not viable.
Yeah, sure.
This is the biggest problem with the game, and the biggest advantage. This is the
I'm
first
still on the boat
TCG.
of testing the meta out. I'm gonna call my judgment once set 3 comes out and kind of figure out how it goes. Because as of right now, I think blue has a pretty decent matchup against red. But I really have no idea how much better red will get with the new cards. Then again, we are getting the 4-cost event, so that is an answer to the Marco, right?
Yes.
So,
Oh, I'm not saying that you can't win with it. I'm just going objectively speaking from a consistency standpoint. The red decks, such as Ace, are going to be on such a higher consistency level than these other strategies, to where if your sole purpose is just to win, I think it is going to be in your best benefit to only play that deck, or Zoro, the decks that have super hyper consistency, because blue is super good versus red. But at the end of the day, you guys know as well as me, you can open hands where you don't open a stacker, or you just don't get to continue the stack, and then you're losing to yourself. And that's not
Not
a
to mention
bad
Red
thing.
is also like they tend to have a more linear game plan. It's a lot
Yes.
easier to play a red deck than a blue deck or like a blah deck. You know what
But
I
I
mean?
think Ace changes that because you have a lot of things.
Mm,
Like, you got to think about this now that you can
that's why
discard
I'm excited for
events.
Ace.
Now you can discard events. That adds a new layer of skill
Mhm.
expression to the game. That's why I enjoyed blue, because managing the deck was a different layer you got to
Yeah.
experience than other strategies. And similarly with Rob Lucci, you're going to be managing the trash. So if you're willing to put in the hours with that, you're going to be highly rewarded, because I
Yeah.
have heard that's one of the most skill intensive strategies. But overall, we're going to be able to actually like differentiate ourselves from other people in this meta. And I think that's really nice from a competitive standpoint, because my point is, this is the only TCG I have ever heard of or engaged in where they actually made an effort to appeal to the casual player. And what I mean by that is, even in set one, while it did almost look like what many people consider to be a tier 0 meta at these premier events, with Kid taking up about 60 to 70% of every top cut, you could still win with any deck. You could play Kaido. And if you were a fan of that deck from the anime and you generally just enjoyed that playstyle, you could still perform well and do good. Now, that's really nice in this game, because other games like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic, if you're a casual person, you just get cast off to the side. And in some ways, rules are just so complicated in those games, there's almost no entry point to tournaments for those players. And I think in this meta, we're going to see a lot more benefits on those soft skills of actually like engaging with the works. Whereas, like, in set one, you could really like do that. But I think a lot of the meta shape people don't really recognize. While, you saw this guy top with Garp, you saw this person top with Smoker
Yeah.
or whatever, decks aren't that much better than others. But what you have to take in consideration from a competitive standpoint, and I've touched on this before, when going to a premier level event, it's different than locals, because you have your 8 rounds, and in a best of one game, many people chose to play Kid in set one because it was the deck that had the highest chance to open up playable. And when
It
we
was the most
consider those
consistent
factors,
deck.
yes, and consistency trumps power in a wide range
Absolutely.
of tournaments. So while you or I could top with blue, saying that we could top with blue 5 events in a row is a lot more unrealistic than a person who's playing something like Ace, where you literally can search every card in your deck with every other card. You're going to have Ezo, which can
Mhm.
search the Whitebeard Pirates event card. And since you're playing Ace, you can discard that card if you have no reason for it. And because you have so many Whitebeard Pirates, you can play the event card, which could add you Ezo. And then you have Striker, which can get you that. So everything kind of like goes in sync. All of the pieces connect themselves together. Whereas in blue, we're still reliant on opening those stackers to get access to their other pieces. We have to access specific connectors to access
Mhm.
our overall
Okay.
game plan. And I think that's the general strategy with all the other colors in set three.
One thing I wanted to touch on real quick as well, and Saucy maybe had the same thought. I was gonna switch to Zoro set 2 and drop Doflamingo right when the
Yeah.
set came out. And I
I'm
played a
thinking
bunch of it, but I had
Zoro.
this issue, right? That all the 2K counters in the deck were just so strong. And so basically I didn't know how to counter effectively, and I just took
Right.
damage and lost. Right?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know how to play red.
It's
Well,
so-
that's good though.
Yeah, and then essentially what happened was you won that case tournament. I thought I was making any reason to play Doflamingo, and I'm like, okay, it can't be bad, so I'll play it.
There is a chance.
So
That's
Yeah.
such a good point, Ash, when you're talking about like the OPO1 meta. I thought also I do want to say like representation does play a big role on like what decks are showing
Yeah,
up on the top
yeah.
list, because
For
like
sure.
we all know that red is gonna be the dominant color in OPO3 and even
Mhm.
OPO4 format most likely. So there's gonna be a ton of people playing those decks, but it's not
Mhm.
to say necessarily that like other colors don't have a chance, but
For sure.
consistency does play a huge role in
Yeah.
that as
Well,
well, and that's where red
I,
kind of shines.
Yeah,
I
it's a best of one. And you think
yeah.
about what's going to win first place. I touched on this on a previous video a long time ago. The time rules kind of benefit the people who are playing those extremely consistent decks in terms of if your goal is to win the tournament. Because if your goal is to win the treasure cup, that's a very different goal than wanting to make top cut, because in the top cut you have the best of 3 series, which
Mhm.
I think this is probably the worst aspect of the game, which isn't even that bad. If I win the first game and we're in game 2, we don't go along with the normal time rules. If we go to time, we don't look at life, we don't see who has more cards on board. I automatically take the match because I won game 1. So it puts you in a situation to where if your deck's more consistent and you could win the first game, or because you're more consistent and you have a higher seeding in
Mhm.
Top Cut, you
Yeah.
chose who went first or second, and then our first game takes 25 minutes.
Mhm.
We have another 15 in game 2. If you're attacking me and I have 10 cards, it may not be correct, but I can just discard all of my cards and stay at 5 life, and then you have a
Yeah.
20 card advantage on me, but it doesn't matter because I know we're going to go into time and I can beat you on a technicality. Think about that, because
Yeah.
that changes what deck you want to bring if your goal is to get first place.
Yeah, and to bring up best of 3 too with time rules as well. Essentially, when it comes to time rules, it comes down to that almost comes down to it's still best of 1, right? It's still literally best. You won the first
Yeah.
game. It's still technically best of 1 at that point, right? I mean, not that people are leveraging that. Sometimes you might have a game 1 that's actually a 50-minute game legitimately. I think Saucy had one like that, right? And so obviously
You
game
could.
2,
You
he's not
did versus
trying to be
did.
he's not trying to play slow. He's playing at his average pace, but really the other guy is going to lose, right? Unless
Right.
yeah.
Definitely. I think that's something that people aren't really mindful of, or maybe it's a lack of experience playing
Yeah.
in Top Cut, because it is a different format, right? Now you're
Yep.
basically playing a brand new tournament. Now you're
Mhm.
playing best of 3, and time
Mhm.
is something you really have to be mindful of.
I want to
Like
say this: if you have 2 fast players, like 2 pretty good players that play
playing a
fast,
Zoro deck or
how
something.
long? How long is an hour long enough?
So I would say with Zoro v Zoro, potentially yes. But in the case of set 1, I would be going super fast because I already knew I wasn't going to attack the other guy.
Hmm.
On my turns would take 5 to 6 seconds on average because I would be like tap out, play, pass.
Yeah.
And I had matches in a side event at the Treasure Cup where we went into like 1 minute left in the game, 25 to 30 minutes,
Hmm.
and I was playing as physically fast as possible. Take
Yeah.
that in consideration to 2 high-level people in the Eustace Kid mirror. The guy who chose to
dude.
go first is at an extreme advantage just because of the seeding rule that there's no
Sure.
dice. And I
Sure.
don't like that. I think if there was none of that, it would feel more fair. But objectively speaking, it leaves a lot of room for people to be frustrated with the core rules that don't even abide by the game. You know, in Yu-Gi-Oh, a lot of people get irritated with the new time rules, the ones in the past 6 years where basically there's different phases. You don't get to make all your attacks at one time. And if the game ends and goes to time, the other guy doesn't get a turn. You're in this phase where essentially you don't actually commit any actions that progress the game, but you can have cards specifically in your deck that allow you to win by a technicality
Okay.
for this scenario. And there were a couple people who were speaking out about that in terms of the Eustace Kid mirror, because we saw a lot of top cuts where 7 out of 8 or all 8 people in top 8 were in that boat. And the guy who chose to go first, because we're both playing control via control, our game 1 can go 25 minutes. And then going into game 2, this guy I watched in an interview, he said, yeah, so because I lost the first game, I was specifically forced to take
Yeah.
this different direction and
Yeah.
go for an aggressive strategy
Hmm.
and try to be super risky, race my opponent down. And that's not a good strategy to take, but he had to go with it because if he didn't, he auto lost.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
One thing is too, like I was talking with this with Garrett as well, and it has to do with time. His opinion, he play tests a lot till 5 in the morning with friends, right? Like in
What the
real
fuck?
life. Yeah, no, it's kind of nuts. And so his opinion is, honestly, this game should be 45 minutes best of 3, right? But I'm like, well, the thing is, a lot of new players are pretty slow, right? But the thing is, because rounds are 35 minutes, I'm actually I'm only forced to go fast enough, right? Like I'm a fast player, but I can slow down and just go. I can just be done, like pace myself to be done in 30 minutes with the other opponent, right? And it almost makes me play slower, which I'm not a fan of, right? So
I don't know about you guys, but I definitely prefer like a single round format, like best
yeah,
of
I do
one,
too.
45
Yeah,
minutes.
me
'Cause
too.
especially with One Piece, there's so much thought involved with like the math part of this game that like by the time you finish one game, it's like I'm like exhausted, man. I'm not ready to play like 2 more games after this. And then like in certain matchups, they go so long that you're never gonna get to that second or third game with just 45 minutes. And
Yeah,
that's
and
why I think time is so important.
let's actually discuss about that. I can play devil's advocate too about best of 1 versus best of 3. I think every card game has this argument, right? And people are just come from Magic or other card games, and they're like, oh yeah, best of 3, best of 3. That's just competitive. That's how else you gonna know you're gonna beat the other person. And it's, well, like most time, it just comes down to time, right? That's what it comes down to me. And a lot of times, as you won the first game, okay, well, now you have to win one of the other 2 games, and you're gonna have an advantage by choosing to go first or second on the second or third game.
I
And
get that it's like a better way to like show skill.
yeah,
You know what I mean? I'm a better player than you. That's why I won best 2 out of 3 or whatnot.
how often is it that you lose the first game and then win the next 2? It's not that often.
True.
In
right?
Yu-Gi-Oh, yes, because it's way more consistent.
It's a different game.
But you got to think
Magic's
that it's
different
not consistent. And I would say that the biggest advantage of this style, and you got to put this into perspective, this game has passed certain milestones for being trending higher than Yu-Gi-Oh, which has always stayed as the #2 popular game, and in some regards, Magic. And when we think about what the reasoning behind that is, I think a lot of it has to go into the etiquette. This is the only game left where there is actually etiquette, and there is people who are not trying to rule shark you and people who are trying to be super aggressive. I referenced very early on in this episode that there was a guy who was legitimately threatening my life in Yu-Gi-Oh! Well, in this game, I think that the best of 1 time frame makes it for a more casual experience and leaves a lot of the etiquette intact, because a lot of people have a misconception coming from other games that this is supposed to be as competitive and that you should be rewarded for your time spent in other games that, had a similar structure. Well, that's not the case. The actual intention of this game was meant to be casual. And if you don't see that, you are living with rose-tinted glasses, because there's so many ways that the game is not decided by skill, and it was intended to be that. This is a fun game, and it's meant to be casual. Why do they make another game called Battle Spirits where they're investing real money and
$1
the
million?
stature? There would be no market for that game if you actually believe that this is the sole purpose of this game was to be competitive. Why would they make another game that is also that stature? That would make no sense. There would be no market for that. This game is meant to be casual, and I found that with the best of 1 rules, it makes people a lot more respectful and a lot more nice, because most people who are not thinking just one way and have a narrow mindset understand anyone can beat anyone, and they're less angry at you. They show more respect, more kindness. At the Peoria Regional, all 9 of the people I went against, while there was like 1 or 2 people who were more serious, they were all nice and respectful. And in Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh, I would say at least one out of 5 people lowers the fun level of the game for you. And that has to do with the time rules, because I have never went into time in a competitive event and lost by the technicalities. I don't even think I've been into time in a competitive event.
Yeah.
I've gotten close a bunch, but it's so difficult, and there's no ties in this game. So, because ties for anyone who hasn't been to a big event, ties normally screw everyone who's involved in a large event, and they also leave room for people to be malicious because two people who are in round 8 undefeated, they will do a consensual tie and make sure they both get to top cut, cucking all these other people with a similar record.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that in this game.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I noted very early on is in one of the live streams, I saw a guy who has won multiple like nationals or worlds in other games, and he gave the other guy's deck a single cut. In Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic, a lot of times the guy will pick up your deck and start doing riffle shuffles and doing all this crazy stuff because
Mm-hmm.
he's worried about you stacking. At least for in-person events, most people, I've been super surprised. The people who have been super sweaty in other games, they show a lot of respect, and they're not trying to beat you by rule sharking or technicality, and
Mm-hmm.
that goes a long way because I've actually enjoyed the game for that reason. It lowers the stress level, and it makes you feel like your time
Mm-hmm.
was better spent.
Yeah.
Every single one of the people I played at the in-person regional, I left and I told them this. I was like, dude, I'm glad that I met you, and I really enjoyed our conversation because they actually took it to that level of enjoyment for me. And
Mm-hmm.
people don't realize who are new that a big point of interest for card games in general is the player interaction.
Yeah.
So when you're sitting there and being a brick wall, not saying anything to the other guy, you're subconsciously lowering the fun level of the game. Because if I wanted to go against, not a real person, I would just
You
be
played
playing
sim.
video games.
Yeah.
That's why so many people got interest over COVID. So, that's why I always try to show respect to the other guy. And I like to leave the conversation knowing that I'm more glad I met this person than not. And that way, it makes the losses feel a
Yeah.
lot better. And, the wins, it feels even more rewarding because you're like, hey, man, this is a really good game. And I always tell people, good plays, if they do something cool, it makes you feel more satisfied because you're bringing the best out of people. It's
Yeah.
not that you just cheese this guy. I always like to put people to the highest level, and I
Yeah.
like to have people who are good competitors. If I
Mhm.
lose to you and you do some good shit and you're respectful and be like, hey, bro, yeah, that was a really good game. Good plays, man. I wish you the best in the next round. And that puts you in a better mindset to
Yeah.
continue winning. One thing I will touch on before I stop ranting is that in the regional, I lost the first round because the other guy had a sequence that I identified was impossible for me to beat no matter what deck I was playing, no matter what hand I opened, and I analyzed that. And before I went into the tournament, I had the mindset that I was going to go undefeated and win the whole tournament. Even after that first loss, my mindset did not change. A lot of people would get irritated or be talking to their friends saying like, damn, this guy cheesed me. Like I could have won all this stuff. But no, for the GOAT, I was just thinking I still have to go undefeated. In order for me to win the tournament in the beginning, I had to go undefeated.
Mhm.
Nothing changed. The mindset stayed the same
Sure.
because if I want to win the tournament, even after I get to top cut, I need to go undefeated. So I still have to, maintain that positive energy.
Yeah.
And I had a specific friend who basically the other guy was being malicious and called the judge on him. And he was really like butthurt about losing because he was like, if there was integrity, like I would have won all this stuff. And I tried to tell him right after the round, I was like, listen, if you explained it to the judge in the best possible way you could, then you should feel satisfied that you did everything you could to win. And there's no reason for you to go into the next round with that negative mindset because these are long tournaments and you need to have the highest level of precision and clarity in order to perform. And, a lot of people want to sit there and talk to their friends after the round saying, this guy beat me like this, beat me like this.
Mhm.
And when you keep explaining to people like, oh no, he did that, bro. Like he got
Yep.
the judge and the judge basically just honey dicked him and just cucked you. And you're just like, fuck, man, you're feeding the flames. That's why you got to maintain that same mindset. And I always say that a big reason why I try to be respectful to people is that I only am dissatisfied with myself if I made an error. If I do everything I can and the guy still beats me, that makes it even better for me to take that loss. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't care. Like, I did my best. And recently, I've been even better about that. you know, I try to like leave my hand on the table whenever it's not my turn. So the guy just knows how many cards I have.
Yeah.
I just sit there and just act relaxed because you
Um,
don't have to be thinking like
to
that.
kind of pause you from your rant, Ashby, right? Because it did go on a little bit. I actually wanted to do a double segue before I forget, right? Essentially, I guess the main thing we're kind of leading this toward is that, you know, this community is great. You know, it's out of anything, I would say it's like 9 out of 10 at locals, at regionals. And the only problem that there is right now, it's not even an elephant in the room, is essentially online. And most of the time, the issues with online have to do with signing up. That's like literally the hardest part, right? So I want to say like this community is 9 out of 10 until signups happen, right? And then signups happen and people can't get into regionals, and all of a sudden you see on TCG all the card prices go down. Everyone's selling their alt arts, right? So
I mean, I definitely agree with you on that part. Like, I really think that either the organizers need to step their game up as far as the platforms that they use to like get these tickets, or
Mm.
Bandai in general. Like, maybe they can increase the cap to these events because
Mhm.
there's no doubt how many like how many people are really trying
Yeah.
to like get into this game.
Yeah.
There's a huge following, right? And they really need to match, you know, the number of people that are trying to get into these events, because right
Yeah.
now people that are getting into these online
Mhm.
events are not necessarily your best players, right? They're the best clickers. They're the
Yeah.
people with the best
Not
internet,
to
you know?
downplay people like me who have gotten into
Right,
these
no,
tournaments and
absolutely.
topped, but yeah, you're 100% right. It's never
My
the
point
best
is,
player in the world. It's the best player that happened to click first.
In the same
Yeah.
regard, it's always the people who sometimes have the worst internet and the worst camera.
Why is that? You're right.
I don't know, like it
how
just
does
you know,
that happen?
it's kind of
Must have
like, you know,
really
when you're
good
blind, your other
cellular.
senses are heightened. It's just like whenever your camera is really bad and the guy can't identify your cards, you just randomly become like
higher
a
chance
way
of
better
winning.
player.
Yeah. And also with that, I'm actually working on a video. I recorded it twice and I just didn't like the way I sounded. I'm in the middle of doing a video just showing how I do my setup. Ashby, I did a lot of research. And so now I have like a step-by-step guide, easy 23 steps on how to set up
Like
OBS
an
Studio.
online tournament.
Yeah. Oh, how to set up your OBS Studio to record yourself and your opponent, but they only see what you see. You know, I don't know if you guys know my setup and how I have it set up, but
I got you.
it's actually not too hard the more I thought about it. I just had to find the video. All I have to do is change some files, right? Essentially.
Is it the one you sent me?
Yeah, there's one I sent you, but I'm making one that doesn't include that video, but it's a lot of things from that video. And it specifically had a setup if you're playing against somebody. So I'm in the middle of that, and I can provide you a bunch of links because I already have like a text version first.
Yeah,
But
I mean, while we're on that topic, you may want to make a video about like how to catch cheaters also if you're gonna play online.
yeah, there's
So
other
yeah,
things
definitely
like
go into
that. I know Penguin Pirates did one recently, but it's just obvious. Like if you're searching, don't actually search. Look at your opponent to see if he's doing some doing some funny
Right.
things, right?
I think I watched that video. It's very insightful.
Yeah, so yeah, I think you should do that, but the main thing is it's really hard to tell if you only see 8 bits, right? At that same time, Ashby, you faced some opponent, you couldn't tell what any cards were. At that same time, it may actually be Discord sometimes, right? And essentially I had the same problem against the law. I had no idea what half his cards were. I had to pretend what's out there, right?
I think the organizers definitely have to play a bigger role in like regulating these events, because it's like if you're allowing players with terrible setups, like terrible video quality to play these events, like how does this, you know, that kind of ruins the integrity of your tournament.
Yeah,
you know what I
essentially
mean?
you almost need an IT for a Discord IT.
And the guy I played against that had the McDonald's setup, that was round 8. And I was like, how did this guy get this far?
I think sometimes Discord can, like during the day, because of how used it is, how many people are on, it can be worse. And I don't know how much Discord experience you have, but I have a lot of Discord experience, and all of a sudden we're like raiding in WoW and we have no Discord. We're like, what do we do?
I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, this guy's quality was like 144p, and like I mentioned, I thought he actually had a Kinemon leader, but then he was on Whitebeard, and it's like, bro, at a certain point, are you just turning a fog machine on in your room? Like, are you just hotboxing? Because this is getting like a little bit like ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think the organizers definitely need to play a larger role when it comes to regulating these events, when it comes to like cheating, when it comes to video quality, all the things. And I definitely don't agree with the fact that they're trying to like keep the voice of people down, like, you know,
Yeah.
sounding these bells like, hey, dude, like there's a lot of cheating going on.
And
And
I can't speak officially to that. I did talk to someone recently, and their perspective on it was, imagine you're in an organization, right? And you report somebody for sexual harassment, okay?
Mhm.
And all of a sudden that guy's fired, but no one, they're not like announcing to the whole company, this guy was fired for sexual harassment, right? This guy was just let go. And
But if the guy's
so
famous, they are.
I don't know, but essentially, uh, basically they see it as that point, right? But it's almost on us, the community, to at least talk about it and be like, hey, this guy was banned because he's a cheater, or this guy was banned because he happened to run 51 cards by accident, right? There's a difference.
I actually
And
talked to the head of the core TCG. He messaged me about this, so I can actually speak a little bit on it.
sure.
And he was essentially saying the reason why they're doing that is because there are legalities associated with sharing the rights and images of someone without their consent. And that's why
It's
you have to
defamation,
ask.
right?
Yeah, that's why you have to like ask if you want to stream. You know, without the that's why you have to ask if you want to stream, but you can record without it. And the
Mhm.
problem with it is that the Bandai people are not explaining that this is the reason why they can't do this. They're just like, no, don't share this guy's band. And then it looks bad, and it's like, wait, you're just trying to cover up your stuff. When I was like, that's a more logical reason, but they're not telling anyone that. It just makes it look like they're hushing people. But you know, an even greater problem to this, and you know, I know Saucy touched on this a little bit. One of the biggest issues is that everyone thinks that the company, Bandai, and the tournament organizers are required to have the best interest to them to the game and to the tournaments. Once again, I will restate: this is a casual game. If you get mad that you didn't get to enter these tournaments, you need to go do something better with your
Cut
life,
some
because
grass.
this is just a game and it is recreational activity. It is not your right to get to do this. And at the end of the day, this is a business. The thing is, Bandai is a business. Now, when we look at this from a marketing standpoint, why did we not get much product in the USA?
Yeah.
They're looking out for the interest of the investors, and they do not care about these tournaments because that makes them little to no money. It is more of an incentive to keep their customers that have already been required. The problem with that is they're already selling out of all of their product that's being sent, so they don't even need to increase this cap, because if they put out a bunch of product at the beginning of the game and it did not sell out, then the head of the company and the investors would not give them an additional round of funding, an additional round of a C level funding, a D level funding. These are 10 millions, 100 millions of dollars, and they are not going to get the money from the investors, from the angel funds to continue the game if they don't sell out. So a lot of people want to talk shit on Bandai and this stuff like that and capping the tournaments. Well, there's no way to gauge the interest when this is a new product and a new
Yeah.
market segment,
True.
and they are appealing to the investors. People are like, oh, why is the tournament capped at 500? It's like, bro, they don't care. They've already
Yeah.
made the money, and that's been demonstrated. They don't have to change this marketing plan. They could keep doing the same thing, because the
Well,
people who are buying out all the packs, buying out all the starter decks, who are making it hard for the people who actually play, half the time they don't even play. They're just scalpers. There are people who have no association. They've never played a card game, and they just want to collect, or they're just trying to flip it for a profit. So at the end of the day, if they don't answer to our calls about cheating, about this other stuff, what is the negative for them? Now, the negative is if they talk about this stuff to people and explain what's actually going on, that can give them a negative PR. Whereas the positive is if they just don't discuss anything and don't give themselves a transparent voice, it doesn't matter if people continue playing the game, because these people who are scalping are just going to buy out the product anyway.
I have a question. Do you think people would prefer a higher cap, but I mean, I understand this thing, but like I'm talking about from player perspective, right? Oh, I got into the tournament, but you have to be top 512 in order to get entry promo, right? Because that's usually end up being the problem, right? Because it's almost at this point, there's only a finite limit of how many promos they can give out, right? That they have. And so essentially, I can at least argue, at least I got into the tournament. I did go X3 drop, right? And I didn't get any promos, but at least I got in. Would people be less upset?
I would still enter if that situation was,
Yeah, you wouldn't be mad. You actually might be happy that at least I got to play, because that's
I just legitimately enjoy the game. Like I'm not playing this game for the promos.
Yeah,
I'm just here to compete and
it's a bonus
see how far we can go,
for us. It's a bonus.
Exactly. The promos are just a bonus, obviously, but
well, I mean,
for me personally, I would definitely enter. But going back to what Ash was saying, regarding Bandai itself as a company and why it seems almost like they're keeping the whole cheating situation under wraps, is like it's all about brand image, right? Like they don't want to look like they're promoting this game filled with cheaters. Like they don't they don't want to look like that in front of their audience. And the other thing also is like, what is the positives for Bandai, like recognizing the cheating is going on? Like to them it's little to no positive in that regard.
So does that mean it's kind of up to the community not to like shame people that are cheating, but at the same time, like, at least talk about it, right? I don't think we should really be punished. I don't think we would ever get punished for saying, obviously, if we're coming out and saying, oh yeah, John Ashby's a huge cheater, he did this, this, and this, watch this video, that's basically defamation, right? But we can at least appeal to people as an example.
That's not illegal in the U.S.
Oh, now, maybe I'm wrong.
Some of that can be put into context because this is a Japanese company, and defamation is actually an illegal practice in Japan, and you can actually see legal repercussions. You can actually get jail time for that in Japan. And since this is an outsourced company, they probably want to keep regulations the same across the board. That's why companies like Yu-Gi-Oh, while they could have cash prizing in the US, they have decided to keep things same across the board, because then they're just appealing to one market and giving priority over it when it's like a global game.
Yeah.
And, you got to think about the fact that, like, if you're in any online event and, like, I wasn't trying to convey this message in my last video that I was super pissed about this guy who cheated. I just thought it was funny, so I wanted to touch on it for a second and, like, just put it out there. But at the end of the day, you can't stop someone from cheating. If they want to, I could make a fucking Whoopi Goldberg machine on how to, like, switch out my life card with another one off camera. There could be a guy who's sitting in front of my camera and he's giving me hand signals about what to do because he's better at the deck. Like, just have fun and do your best. And at the end of the day, if someone does something like outlandish and it was malicious, then, like, you can report it. But, like, at the time, the judge didn't do anything for me, and he acknowledged the guy cheated. And I was just explaining that because I'm like, that's just funny that this guy gets second place and gets all this money for that.
Do you want to talk about that real quick? I didn't really understand what happened. Was it soft cheating, or do you not want to talk about it?
I mean,
what exactly
I kind of explained it. I might have explained it when you weren't recording, but basically what happens is, the guy just made a couple multiple illegal plays. He had 9 Dawn, and he played a Squard for 3 and a Seaquake for 1. So that's 4. Then he played a Marco for an additional 4. That's 8. So he should legally have 1 Dawn left. Somehow he attaches a Dawn to his leader in the same turn, so he should be at 0. But he's actually at 1 at this time. Then he plays a Bleheim blocker for 2, which
that same turn
should have. Yes, and he legally should have 0 Dawn, but for some reason he still has 1 up, and he plays down the Bleheim anyway, and he doesn't even tap the final Dawn. So now he's gotten an additional attack on me. He has put out a blocker that he legally should not have, and he has 1 Dawn up, and it's Whitebeard, so he is representing an event during my turn, which basically just changed the course of the game. And I didn't think it was like, I didn't notice it because obviously, like, I don't really care that much. I'm just trying to, like, get my own self-accomplishment. And I find out, like, also on the following turn, he attacked with his Bleheim for 3, and it was on my leader. And like I explained, I want to, like, go against the person, like, at their best. And if something's doing something like this objectively, like, has no effect, it's just a hard loss for them, I don't want them to do that. So I let the guy put out his stage before doing that, take back that action, assuming that he played his stage and hit for 5 anyway, And I thought like the guy was chill and he didn't mean to do that. But then people in my chat were like, go back, like he made like 3 or 4 cheats in one turn. So I'm like, okay. I didn't review anything else he did in the game, so he could have done more, but I realized he changed his tone of voice when he did that stuff, and he was holding his Dawn in a weird way, making it difficult for me to see, like, what he was doing.
In my
it's my fault.
I didn't see that, what happened. Him getting his voice all cracked up, it sounds like he got really nervous because being accused, if you're being accused of cheating, no, dude, bro, stop it, right? The main thing I'm thinking here is too, that's a lot of Dawn and placing a card. So that probably did have a big aspect on the game. I've definitely accidentally cheated before. Like I've dawned up something and then paid 9 for me. I only paid 8 for a Mihawk. Because I had one dot open.
Like it majorly affected the game. Because you got to think a guy attached 1 to his leader that was illegal, which means he was demanding 2 cards from me on his attack.
And he plays a blocker.
He also played a blocker. He also left 1 Dawn up that he shouldn't have had. So he was essentially mitigating 2 attacks during my turn and creating 1 attack for his turn.
Do you think it was he's dumb and he made a mistake? Or do you think it was actually malicious? Or somewhere in between?
I don't think a person that ends a tournament second.
Yeah, I think he knows. This is the thing. I want to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, but ultimately, Whitebeard is a very simple deck. I have found that, like Saucy said, the game's super simple. That's one of the most simple decks ever. Like, once you understand the core game plan, you should know what you're doing, especially Stagebeard. Like, bro, it's fucking Stagebeard. You just put this card on the board that says, haha, I win, you lose. And the guy had multiple times where he could have, taken that stuff, he could have tried to reverse it. It's the fact that he did 3 different things that were illegal in one turn and didn't say anything about it, because at some point you're going to look back and be like, bro, I played 6 cards in one turn. How did I do that? That's where it's like, to me, since he got second, like he said, the guy is obviously a high level player and he had to know what's going on. Now, it may not have been intentional at first, but at some point he was either being malicious, the fact he was holding his Dawn suspiciously and changing his voice,
nervous,
that means one of 2 things. Number 1, he was actually just looking for a way to win because I was in the driver's seat at this point and he decided to go for a soft cheat so that I didn't notice. Or he didn't do the first thing intentionally, but he knew what he did was illegal and he didn't want to put any light to it because he knew that would allow me to win the game.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Yeah, because there's different levels to it. I just wanted to clarify, right, exactly what happened. That's all.
No, and I don't mean any ill will to the guy, but I just wanted to bring light to that because I saw a lot of people online were giving him props for getting second place. And my thing is, I didn't care about getting his prizes stripped or whatever. I don't give a fuck about that. I just was like, people are giving this guy a lot of love and respect for winning. And I just wanted to let people know that that was not all as deserved because, this is an RNG game and that's a major accomplishment.
Yeah. And I just wanted to at least talk about that in general, just because, I think personally it is a pretty good, it literally is drama, but people want to hear that. People want to know what's going on. I thought it was at least interesting to talk about, right? And not in a bad way drama, but.
And people wanted me to blast the guy, but I don't care.
We just want to hear your perspective, yeah.
I mean, I was just putting it out there so people are observant and people know that, topping with blue is really hard in this meta. I went against 4 law people. To go X2 and beat 3 out of 4 law people and beat another 3 Whitebeard people and a Zoro, that I had to make 0 misplays the entire tournament. And I was more about saying, hey, you know what? I demonstrated that I could top with this deck and that it is a viable deck. Because there were people who were being malicious to me in another community that were just telling me I was shit and that my coachings were shit and stuff. And so that's why I played the deck. And then when this happens, I'm just trying to let people know, hey, I did really good. And also, I could have done even better if it wasn't for this technicality.
Yeah.
And that shows you this is a real deck.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. With that, however, I did want to potentially go over this. Were you saying if I show a video of on here of someone's thing, I could get punished in some way? What was your thoughts on that?
Okay. So I'll explain this to you. So you were in my Discord, and you may have seen in the chat at the time, maybe like a month ago, there were two Whitebeard people that were in the finals of the German regional, and they were both caught cheating in the exact same 2-second frame at the exact time. One player, his camera was angled directly downward, so he essentially fake shuffled his own deck because he was giving the observation that it was a 2D object, and he thought the other guy wouldn't notice. Well, the other guy individually looks at multiple of his life cards, which is a huge advantage in Whitebeard. And the guy who shared this, I was thinking about putting it as a transition to be shown on that stream because I thought it would just be funny in between rounds. And the guy was like, hey, I don't want you to do that, bro, because he was the person who clipped it from the stream. And he said that Bandai reached out to him and said that if he shared it with anyone, they were going to ban him and like pursue him. Because I've seen people in Yu-Gi-Oh! Get cease and desist letters for stuff like that. So I would just probably like not do it.
Sure.
And I think that goes back to the rights and image loss is that they don't want to like deal with someone like arguing that you didn't ask for consent. So I think it's okay to talk about it, but don't show the footage.
I'm going to show you two. You probably already seen this, but we can at least talk about it with the audience, and I'll explain exactly what's going on. And maybe someone will link this somehow. Some third party will link this in the comments, right? So if you guys
on Twitter, you'll find it. I said some funny shit.
If you go to my video on Discord, guys, you'll see this. By the way, you might have to pull it up live. And so you guys have probably already seen this one, but it's
I haven't seen this one.
You haven't seen this one? Okay, so it's Whitebeard versus Whitebeard. This one looked like a complete joke, okay? Right? And I just want you to watch the Whitebeard on the left because this is where the cheating comes in, and I'll tell you... actually, I'll let you guess what happens. How about that? So, I'm going to play this footage so people don't hear this. So he pays 2. He plays a Radical Beam... a guard point.
Is he being attacked?
Yeah, he's being attacked right now by a 16k Whitebeard. 16k Whitebeard leader. Okay. And so he's being attacked right now. So he has to guard out. And he only has 4 cards in hand. He empties his hand completely. So he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 guards. So he's 16 versus 16.
Matched it.
He's matched it, but he needs 1k more, right? And he literally emptied his hand. He has no cards in hand, okay? And then what's going on? Goes over here. Oh, and an Amos. Wow, how convenient. He happened to have just enough.
How dumb can you be?
Yeah.
What?
And apparently, you know,
the guy noticed.
Good cheat.
I mean, he posted this video. He recorded this and posted it.
But he didn't notice it at the time.
Maybe he didn't notice it at the time. I don't know.
I'm not gonna lie. If that guy didn't notice at the time, I'm sorry. There's nothing to say about that.
Yeah.
Like, that's just embarrassing on that guy.
Yeah.
That's like saying that I am just blind. Like what?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, too, this guy could have won, apparently, on the left. He blocked first with the Marco and discarded, like, a 1k counter in order to bring it back. But then, I guess, maybe this Whitebeard player switched it up and said, I'm going to swing with everything instead of playing out, like, a blocker or my own thing and have, like, 3 Dawn left up for 3 Radical Beams, right? And so he just went for game, and the guy was 1k counter short and obviously lost in this kind of hilarious fashion. So I think this one's pretty hilarious because it looked like a joke at first, and then because I would be like, oh, and a 1k, wow, I won, right? Just kidding, though, I lost, right? So
the fuck, it's like his hands are visible the whole time.
Yeah, apparently.
Bro, I thought you were gonna play.
It's not like there's anything going on. You're swinging in with your leader for 16k. All your attention is on their board, waiting for them to counter out. Like, not sneaky in any way. Like you're just basically asking to get.
You want to see the sneaky part?
Hold up, wait. Go to Steven's page. He has another one.
I know. Yeah, it's
Bro, show the one with the Kinemon guy. Kinemon. I actually just laughed for like multiple times.
Okay, I'm fine. I had it pulled up earlier, but I guess it closed on me.
That was the funniest shit.
This one was a little nuts, and they're very obvious as well, right?
Well, because this guy said before he started the match, he said, "I'm sick," and when he cheats, he
Mhm.
coughs, and that's where it's
Oh,
fucking
God.
hilarious.
Yeah.
Because he's just and he's just
Wait,
reaching
which
off
one am I
screen.
looking at here? The one on the
Okay,
left
okay,
or
yeah.
the right?
Oh, you haven't seen the Saucy. Okay, Saucy.
no.
For people who haven't seen this, I'll describe to you what's going on, okay? Got right players playing Kinemon. He has some awesome mat. And he brings his cards all the way up kind of to his face. Like right above where you would normally see it. And then you could see his arm. His white arm. He just grabs a card. I don't know if he switches a card or if he grabs it. And then
Oh my God.
reading
I
the
wish there was audio to this.
Yeah, no, there is audio. There is audio. The guy's just
Oh.
coughing. Like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes. But he's pretty smart because he did it while his opponent was searching. So his opponent is looking at his deck, and so the guy is not going to notice it.
Thinking.
Oh wow. Pretty slick, man. But
What I find funny about this one and why I laugh so much is I look in the comments and someone else is like, "No way, he cheated me too."
Yeah.
No way. I look. There's 5 people who
all
cheated.
these people.
Yeah.
I thought about this in the same tournament. I said the game is already such like if you're a bad person, you can at least go like 50-50. It's like, wait,
Yeah.
bro, how did you have to cheat 5 or 6 people in a row? Turn one Okiku is already just gonna cheese half the people you go against. The fact that you couldn't beat anyone legally, it's like, bro, how dumb are you?
Yeah. No.
That's the sad part about it, right? Because most people that cheat, they're really bad at the game. It's how they get their wins.
How
'cause they
bad do you have to be at the game? That's such an autopilot strategy. Like, turn one Okiku, sign the slip.
Yeah. One thing I want to say actually too, I was talking to Paul, so you don't know who Paul is yet.
I've heard of him.
Ashby, yeah. So Paul is he was at my locals. He just got 3rd at the last regional last weekend, right? So shout outs to Paul, right?
Did he top at Peoria?
No, he didn't travel. No,
Oh.
he got 3rd in. So he got 3rd online in his first webcam tournament playing Whitebeard. Okay, in round 7 of 9. Okay, he's 6-0. He goes to round 7. His opponent got disqualified, and essentially they both go into chat, and immediately someone comes in and says, "Right now, the law player, get your deck out right now. We're doing deck check." And that's how they do deck check. They said don't do anything. Don't move anywhere. Don't even touch your deck right now. Get this things out. I want you to then show me all your cards right there. And apparently, I don't know for sure. My buddy Paul doesn't know for sure. But the thought was that maybe he had a Radical Beam in there in the deck, which was not on his deck list, right? So, but I think Paul told me that his name was this slander. I'm gonna say his name, okay? Steven Deck. Don't know. Maybe he wasn't cheating.
That guy was a confirmed cheater. Other people have reported him.
Okay, yeah.
He's insta banned.
Okay, insta banned already. I heard that it's this guy on the right playing Kinemon. That's what I heard. I don't know for certain, right?
That's the same person.
Yeah, and it's really
So that
funny
is-
you say this, Ashby. This guy on the right, playing Kinemon, the guy in the comments said, "I designed this, Matt. I want to personally apologize." You know, I will.
Funny.
It was like super funny things, you know,
Some bad PR right there.
because it was bad PR for that guy who made this, pretty cool mat. So yeah,
I would be scared to use the mat.
Yeah.
I bet you that law player was just running like 6 Bonnies in their deck. That's why they got that game lost and they did the deck check.
Maybe, but I heard it's a Radical Beam. I mean, if you could choose you could choose to grab a card, at any point, a Radical Beam would be it, because you're just like, well, it's better than a blocker sometimes, right? Actually, just straight up, So yeah, that's just a thought about it. Like, not to, Mr.
The
Steven.
even more funny thing about that guy, and the last thing I'll say on this, is there's another response to it where the guy said, after the guy said he wants his mat back, another guy in the comments said, someone needs to contact the GeoGuessr guy from TikTok to locate this guy's location based off of the mat. And that just made me laugh out loud.
That's funny.
Send me his addy.
Yeah. Oh, getting a call. Not gonna pick that up. Okay. I guess that's the main thing about online cheating, guys. I think the best thing to do is probably record your game so you can protect yourself. But uh, almost in a way, you want to play your opponent's game for them to make sure that you're not misusing their dawn, right? Like it could sometimes be just not paying attention. Like Ashby said, he wasn't looking when his opponent wasn't paying attention to dawn right at the time, and so they got to place an extra card, right? Or it could be this, right? Even worse, people literally adding cards to themselves. But I mean, honestly, if these people will eventually get caught and banned, but what I mean, it's not like public, right? I think there maybe is a list that people know about in some way.
Is there?
But I don't exactly. Do you know about it?
Maybe, like, in
So
the
Orange
judge
Samurai
Discord,
told
but
me
I
there
think
is a
it's-
list out there. Do not let these people in. But we want to know, so we don't let him. If we make a tournament, we don't want him in our sites, right? It's just not great, essentially, right? What kind of punishment do you think would be good for this sort of thing, right? What would be
Shit, man. I think any form of
Perma
cheating
ban.
should be, yeah, like a ban.
okay?
If
Yeah,
there's a thorough
Either a period
investigation,
or a
you can prove
lifetime,
it, then yeah.
depending. Yeah, it has to be harsh because you don't want future, players to continue to cheat. You know what I mean? If it's not harsh enough, people are just gonna keep doing it. Because like, okay, I got DQ'd from an event for cheating, so I'll just go on to the next one. $30 down the drain, but okay, whatever. Let's keep it pushing.
Mm-hmm.
If you ban somebody, like that is a real deterrent for future cheaters
Yeah.
from doing it again.
I think there needs to be an example. To be honest, there should be at least there hasn't been a bad example yet, and yeah, I think people would be more comfortable if there was bad examples, right? I'd be more comfortable not having to worry about people cheating. It should be so disincentivized to cheat, and the game's already like it's so hard to cheat anyway. Like I'm already stacking my deck with Doflamingo, like it's just these cheatings is just like literally adding cards to hand that's like doesn't make sense. So it's very easy to catch.
I mean, you
Right.
can easily cheat with Whitebeard and never be caught with it. I've explained this before. If you're playing stage, just power shuffle your deck. And since the deck has cards that are all fitting the same role,
Yep.
you can put the piles. I'm going to put one vanilla. I'm going to put
Yeah.
one removal spell, one stage, and all these
Yeah.
piled. And then if the guy does a fair cut, you're going to open up a balanced hand. And that's one of the easiest ways people cheat.
Pure power shuffling is straight up. It is stacking the deck. You're right. So also look out for that is when someone does that, tell them, hey, can you riffle shuffle like 6 times for me so I can not have to worry about that. But hey, yeah.
Before we go, the best way to stop the other person from cheating I found is roll one dice to determine how many riffles the guy has to do, like this, and then roll a second dice to decide how many cards they will take off the top or how many piles you want them to do, because that's one of the only fair ways to stop it.
Sure.
I like that.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll say is just awareness in general. Like you're playing in an online event, like with a webcam. Pay attention to your opponent, man. I know that it's easy for you to get lost, like looking at your own video footage, but like it really does help when you expand their picture quality, so you really know what's going on and really just pay attention in every single movement that they make.
All right. Hey guys, well, we've been talking for a little over 2 hours now, and I think maybe this is a good place to stop for now until next time. But before I let you go, did you want to do your socials and plug Saucy first?
Yeah, I mean, mine's pretty simple. You can find all my other socials there. I'm, still growing the channel and all that. But you guys can find me at YouTube at Saucy Play. That's all I got.
And Ash?
At Beats by Ash on YouTube. At Beats by Ash Official, my personal brand, at No Bull Real Talk, and as well Beats by Ash on IG on Twitter. Make sure to check out the Discord as well for coaching. 100K on the way. Let's go.
Got it. And could you close us out with like one of your famous sayings? Any rants at all? Any goat's boat float?
Hey man, like I
Take it
always
away,
say,
Ash.
goats come and go, but boats float. And that's why you're dealing with the best of all time. So make sure to smash all the buttons, give these guys the love, because you want to say that you were a part of the journey from the beginning, because we're giving out the best. So prepare to be blessed. Let's go.